Anybody, anywhere,
It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen.
This pass caught by Paulsen, the tight end.
And from 106.7 The Fan, Grant Paulsen.
Welcome into Take Command. We are streaming our video available at 106.7 The Fan, Team 980 YouTubes. And of course, you can listen to us wherever you get your audio. Please subscribe, please rate, please review, and please send the pod to a friend or two who isn't hip to it and doesn't know about it. Logan Paulsen was in the NFL for 10 years, breaks the film down before and after every game. I'm Grant Paulsen. You can listen to me on 106.7 The Fan from 2 to 6:30 every day. And Logan today is joining us from the friendly confines of Madrid, Spain, where he and the team have already made their way across the pond, getting ready for international football on Sunday. Logan, how was the flight?
Flight was good, man. I mean, it was they treat you so well on that charter, and everybody's get taken care of. It was a little bit bumpy coming across, so I sleep pretty well on planes for the most part. But it's always fun when you get woken up to some pretty bumpy air, and you're like, oh, wasn't a bad dream. We're actually in flight, and things aren't going super well. But yeah, outside of those two kind of really bumpy moments, is easy peasy. Got a lot of food, got a little sleep, and here we are in Madrid, and it's gorgeous outside. So nice to be here. How different are the flights, especially something like this, which I'd imagine is different than when the Commanders are flying to New York or something like that. But how, than what I would do, where I'm sitting in the middle row between two donks on my way out to Madrid. I'm guessing, sounded like from what Bill told me on the radio, they were going to have a different or better plane where they're doing beds, kind of like. How did it work? Yeah, so for the longer, I think they chartered two planes, if I'm not mistaken, and this is the larger of the two. And so, like, I sit in the very back, near, in the farthest back portion of the plane, but no one sits next to you. There's no one on your right, no one on your left, so you got a little space to kind of extend yourself. But as you walk up, it kind of gets nicer. You're kind of moving up the train, so you get in a business plus. Those kind of look like first-class seats. And when you get all the way to the front of the plane, it's like the seats that fully recline for international travel. And one of the things that I like that Dan does is he makes sure that the players have access to those seats, especially the starters, which I think is great, because they're going to be playing. You want them to be able to sleep and kind of get comfortable and enjoy the trip as much as possible. So they take really good care of those guys on the plane. Like you said, like I don't know if it's full bed, but the ones that kind of get all the way nice and low, you have like your little cubby there. So it's a nice setup for sure. That's pretty cool. And then the last thing I'm wondering about the trip would be, I guess, just it's such a cool opportunity. Like, I know a lot of the media people, when I was thinking about going over there, had my wife have been able to, it's a rare once in a lifetime kind of deal. We have a young baby and it just didn't work out. I make the trip anyway. But I wonder with families of players, like I imagine some wives or some kids or something are going over there. How much a part of the week will that be? Like, I'm sure DQ is going to make this a business trip. This is not fun. We're not lollygagging, but it's also a cool opportunity. Like, will the families go just to experience it, but not really get to hang out with dad or the husband, or like, how does that work? Yeah, definitely. When we were checking into the hotel, I saw a couple of families of coaches and players kind of in the lobby and saying hi. And, I think just kind of the high level view of the schedule, it sounds like the guys are going to be pretty busy. It's going to be like a normal week, and they have to do a little bit of travel to get to the practice facility. It's the Real Madrid kind of soccer development facility. It's a gorgeous, we drove by it on the way from the airport. And so I think, it'll be kind of a business week, but I think it's a great opportunity to get the families out here and get them to experience Spain. And so far, I've only been here for a couple hours, but it's a gorgeous city and the people have been super friendly and welcoming. And I'm going to be working a lot on this trip too, but I'm going to try and get out in the evening and just kind of see the city a little bit, and because it seems beautiful. So I think it'd be a great opportunity for guys to, even if they can't do it directly with their families, to get out and do that thing. And then the other thing too is they'll probably have a lighter day on Friday and a lighter day on Saturday, like you would during the normal week, where they're done at 3:00 and then on Saturday they just have a walkthrough where they're done, probably closer to 12. So you'll have some time in the afternoon on both of those days, I think, to just, not go kill your legs or anything like that, but just kind of spend some time and see the sights, which, again, if your family's out here, would be great. And you mentioned, you'd get out and about and experience some culture.
Do they have rotisserie chicken there? Do they have a Publix? I know that.
Dude, I already had some chicken today, man. First restaurant we went to says pollo on the menu. I was like, let me give that a shot. And the guy was like, that is very nice. And I was like, great. So I had that. It was a couple pieces of chicken on a plate with some veggies, and I was like, it's a pretty solid start to the vacay. You know what I mean? So
one for one. Let's go.
One for one. Yeah. Absolutely.
Will you dabble? Will you dabble a little bit with the cultural cuisine?
Yeah, I'm not super picky, not a super picky eater. So as long as it kind of meets my macros, usually I'm pretty good about eating stuff. But there were some food recommendations that people said, oh, you got to try like this. It's like a fish rice dish. So I'm going to try and find a spot that has something like that. And, like I like food. I like experiencing the culture like as much as possible. And obviously there's a little bit of a language barrier here, unlike other parts of Europe. So it'll be kind of an adventure to figure out what we can, what we're going to eat for dinner. So
that's
looking
cool.
forward to
it's going to be a cool trip, I think. We'll get into the football in a second. Last thing, I know in 2016, you went to London with the Redskins, right? Were you on that trip?
Missed that year. So I got a funny story for you, Grant. So I have had 3 opportunities to play international games. So like with the Commanders or the Redskins at the time, I got my passport and everything. We were getting ready to go. That was the year I got cut, played that year with Chicago. In Houston, they were going to go to London, I think also, or maybe Germany. And I played 8 or 9 weeks of the season and got cut 2 weeks before they left. So I have missed both by a very small margin of my international travel. So this is my first international travel with a football team.
No way. I didn't realize that. I was thinking about that for like some of these guys. They got to be super bummed whether it's Jaden, schedule comes out and you're thinking, oh, I'm going to go play in Madrid and I'm the face of the team and one of the faces of the league. He doesn't even make the trip. I was glad to see Terry, even though he's not playing, is going to make the trip. But some of the guys that get held back, whether it's Deron Payne via suspension, we'll talk about that. Traylon Burks having a surgery on his finger. That's got to be a complete bummer because this is something players really look forward to. I think they circle the calendar.
Yeah, it depends on who you talk to. Some players are so like habit driven and habit. You've been around the locker room, Grant. You know how guys are. It's like, oh, don't mess up my routine. I've got to be here at 10:15 or 10:16, and if I'm late, it's going to really throw off my day. So I think there are some people that don't like the disruption of the international trip. But I mean, so far, like we drove by the stadium where they're going to play. And they've got, the Jaden Daniels posters out and, the Miami sign logo up and the Commanders logos up. And so the city's like ready to rock and roll for this thing. And there's a lot of people that are really excited about it. So I do think for a guy like Jaden, obviously, I don't know how he personally feels about it, but I think it's somewhat of a letdown for all of these fans here. I guess this is the largest fan base where there has not been a game, an NFL game so far internationally. You know what I mean? So there's a big swell of like, football support here, American football support. And so I think as a player, it's cool to be a part of that. It's cool to kind of see the international impact that the game is having. Well, I also think it's probably somewhat disappointing for, Jaden and some of these guys who can't come and see that.
Yeah, it is. It's a bummer that the health, the injuries, that you're going to miss out on some of those guys. Frankly, it's also for the fans that shelled out a lot of money. They thought they were seeing maybe 2 really good teams and a Washington team on its way maybe to competing for the division, and that's just not the case right now. They've lost 5 in a row, so let's transition over to the football part of it. They're trying to break a stretch here where they've lost 4 straight by 20 or more points, which has only happened in the league 3 times in the last 35 years. And they get some bad news this week. Deron Payne gets suspended a game for punching Amon-Ra St. Brown. So why don't we start right there? I got no problem with a 1-game suspension. He clearly hit him. Are you surprised at all that he got suspended? It sounds like they appealed, but it didn't go anywhere. So Payne didn't make the trip and is definitely out. What'd you think of the news?
Yeah, I mean, some of the people I talk to, some of the people I work with were surprised by it, but I personally wasn't. I think it just was such a blatant punch and such a blatant kind of loss of cool and loss of perspective in a game. Like, I think the penalty's somewhat warranted. I know Deron probably doesn't want to hear me say that, but like, you can't punch people in NFL football games. It's a physical, violent game, but there's rules to it. And I think he was well outside the rules on that. So I personally wasn't surprised. And again, I was very surprised that he went to that emotional level in a game. And, it's a heightened environment, and guys do stuff that is borderline, but I can't think of the last time I've seen somebody, strike somebody in that manner in a football game. So yeah, warranted to me. And again, disappointing he can't come because he's been a staple of this defense and a guy that has had a really solid season so far. But, can't do that.
How do you coach that afterwards? Is it one of those things where you basically, if you're DQ or you would tell me, like, is it DQ? Is it somebody else? But you come into the office and then he knows he can't do that. He lost his cool for a second and did something ridiculous, but you're obviously looking to scold him in some way. Like, how does that even work? Or is there a chance they didn't say anything because he just knows what he did?
No, they for sure. To me, it's very unlikely that they didn't address it. I think different staffs will handle it differently. Like Mike Shanahan would probably bring you into his office first, talk about it with you there one-on-one, then address it in front of the team after he's kind of softened the blow. I think Dan would probably do something similar, especially with this kind of situation, or maybe he feels like the individual addressing would be enough. But I think in these situations, it's not only good to address the player, but it's a good learning opportunity for the team. So why not, kind of use it and say, hey, this is not who we are. This is not who we want to be. This is an emotional game, but we have to control ourselves. And so I think there's no way, that they didn't address this at some level, probably for sure with the individual. And I would say that it's a very high likelihood that they did in front of the team as well.
Well, it's also just such a significant loss, right? Because you're going up against Miami. And while they've had problems this year, offensively in different capacities, I mean, they're coming off of a get-right game where they really ran the ball effectively. I mean, Devin Achane went for a couple hundred yards all-purpose, and we'll look more ahead to Miami in the next game. But this is one of those where your back's against the wall defensively. You're going through one of the tougher stretches, frankly, in team history. You're now the 31st ranked defense in the league, and this is one of your best players, man. So to not have him in this game, not to mention he was the captain last week, he's a leader, to not have him all week long for the practices, which means so much, and the trip, it's just a huge loss for this team.
Yeah, I think so. And again, he's been one of the more consistent guys, right? So I'm not going to say anything here that you just didn't say. And I see it the same way as you. Like, he's a veteran, he's a leader, he's a guy that's been a consistent contributor. And so not to have him in a game like this where Miami's kind of seems to be on the good foot all of a sudden is going to be really tough. And I think, like you said, they do a lot of exotic stuff in the run game. They have a very young left guard who's struggled this year. Like, I think about that matchup as one that would have been tilted in Washington's favor if Duran had been playing. So, it is frustrating. It's disappointing, and obviously hurts the team. But hopefully, hopefully the team and Duran learn from this and it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, number 10 rushing offense in the league, Miami. Logan Paulsen, Grant Paulsen on take command. Could mean an opportunity. The other side of this, though, is there's going to be time the rest of this year, very likely, where you get a little younger on the roster and you play some other hungry guys. So clearly Eddie Goldman's role is going to grow. It's going to be a lot of Javon Kinlaw. But I would think Jerjon Newton, who blocked a field goal last week, Sheldon Day, who – at times last year I thought was really good. He showed up on tape a couple times in games already this year. Somebody's got to step up. And the guy I point to is Johnny Newton, 36th overall pick last year, second round pick. Like, maybe he gets to play a little more and gets into a rhythm and makes some noticeable, impactful plays. That would be a huge deal to get him going here in his second season, because he becomes an important player down the stretch for me to monitor in terms of the big picture here, trying to find building blocks. Like, where are we at in his development? What are you seeing from him?
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that, I think he's shown you flashes, but I think he's always kind of left you wanting more. And again, it's a tough transition for him because he's coming off the injury last year, and he didn't really get to me kind of feels like it could be his rookie year kind of in a way. And so I look at some of the stuff that he's done. Obviously, there's that quick win pass rush that he has against Kansas City. Like, I want to see more of that stuff. I want to see him kind of come to life in that way. And I think he's done some good stuff from a hustle and compete standpoint. Like, the Chargers game comes to mind where he's really run into the football in pursuit. And he's a big man that's getting after the football down the field. But I think there's just been a general lack of flash to his game, for a guy of his draft caliber. So I think I'd like to see maybe an expanded role that gets in a more consistent rhythm and you see something from him. And so obviously, while this is a bummer for Duran and kind of a disappointment for the team, I do think this provides an opportunity where, hey, here's a young guy who's got some talent, who's got some ability to step up and get more consistent repetitions in a game.
So this could be a dumb question, and you could tell me if it is, but when I watched him coming out of college, I loved him as a pass rusher and a pocket pusher and a collapser. And it hasn't quite translated. Is it as simple as like it's really hard up here? Or is it, I don't want to say usage like they're misusing him, but the role could be different. Like at Illinois, maybe, hey, man, you're getting up the field, you're wreaking havoc. Like it just seems like it almost a completely different style of play. What do you see in that regard?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, Graham. And I think Grant, that's what we call you, Grant. And what I'd say is that with Jerzon, like, we've talked about this with Connerly, coming up to the NFL level, like the standard of defensive line play is crazy different than anything you'd see in college. And when you're a defensive lineman and you're a young player coming in, like one of the things I'm always surprised about is the shock that's even like really good pass rushers experience when they go up against their first NFL offensive lineman. It's just a different breed of human being. It's much more technical, hand placement, foot placement, body position, torso position of the offensive lineman. You're not going to get these kind of quick, easy wins because they're not going to give you anything, right? And then not only that, are they technically more proficient? They're bigger, they're stronger, they're faster. Their knowledge and understanding of the game is way higher. And so I like to kind of go back and look at draft picks that I liked, in the last year's draft. A lot of them are defensive linemen, and I'm always shocked, and I shouldn't be anymore, to see how difficult it is for them to kind of find their way versus NFL offensive linemen. So I think this is part of it. I think last year he came in a little bit out of shape because of the foot injury, and he did some good things, but I think this really is year 2 for him, where he's going to get a lot of opportunities and a lot of reps. And again, this is big boy football up here. Like, you're not going to see as many one-on-ones. You're going to see a lot of double teams on the interior when you're playing nose or the 3 technique. And I think you're just getting a little bit of that now, and so he's got to learn, he's got to continue to develop, and I think he will.
He's young too, by the way. He just turned 23 years old.
Oh, wow.
6'2" and about 300 pounds. So he's maturing and physically kind of coming into his own, and it's only going to get bigger and stronger. But yeah, this is a great opportunity for him. There's no doubt. The big news of the week out in Ashburn, I guess we buried the lead here in our kickoff segment looking at this defense, is that just yesterday, not long before you were in the air, Dan Quinn came out and said it was time to make a change. He felt like they had to do something. So he is taking over as the defensive coordinator, which effectively, best I can tell, just means he's going to call the defensive plays. I guess it's also possible he leads some more things during the week here in the meeting room on the defensive side of the ball. This is something I was asking for the last few weeks on the show, because he has been so successful as a coordinator in the past, and it just felt like they had to do something different. Joe Witt stays on staff to continue to help in the comparable role that he has. But what do you make of Quinn coming out and saying, hey, I'm going to call the plays and we're going to try something different?
Yeah, I mean, it's always tough when a guy gets demoted or a guy loses their job, because, again, it's hard to get those opportunities. And I think this opportunity, if you're kind of just trying to be pure, like truly altruistic, it's not totally fair to Joe Wood Jr., right? It's going to be tough because, like, they're banged up. Like, what he thought they were going to be, what he thought they could be this year didn't come to fruition. And I think a big part of that is due to injury. And again, I'm not trying to make excuses, and I don't think he'd make excuses for himself. But I think it is kind of an unfair evaluation of him this year. But like you were saying, something needed to change. I mean, you can't be giving up points kind of unabated week in and week out and not expect there to be some type of ramifications or some type of change in the defense. So I think it's something that needed to happen. I'm glad that Joe Witt Jr. is still on the staff. I like his energy. I like his vibe. I think he's a good coach. It's just I think this is a tough situation for anybody. And so I think that's the thing that I look at, and I say to myself, like, yeah, I think Dan's a brilliant guy when it comes to calling defenses. And I think Joe Witt Jr. he's shown me things that I get really excited about. But I'm not sure changing the play caller changes anything for the defense, quite honestly. Like, and what I mean by that is, like, when I went back and watched this film, I got through about 2/3 of it before I got on the plane. Is the stuff that I'm seeing is stuff that we've seen for the last couple of weeks. It's like we're not fitting runs correctly, where our eyes are bad versus motion, where we're dropping guys in certain coverage looks, like versus runs, like we're losing our coverage responsibility. And I'm not sure if changing the guy who's calling the play positively affects the defense in a dramatic way. To me, that stuff feels like stuff that needs to be corrected and worked on and developed in the week. And again, like I'm not sure that is something that that Dan Quinn can impact in a week period. Even if he is like getting more hands on in the defense, like this seems like something that takes a long time to fix. Because I think about it in the same way like you would take to fix a run game, right? It doesn't just happen overnight. Like we got to work combinations, we got to work footwork, we got to work feel, we got to work eyes, and that's repetition. And some of the mistakes I feel like I'm seeing require a ton of repetition and a ton of focus and a ton of communication that, again, I think just takes more time than is going to be allowed in this week here in Spain.
So that's what I'm wondering when I hear that is, like, you have the bye week coming up, which will help, right? That's a reset. Mm-hmm. That's a multi-week thing where you could even, you talked on the last pod about maybe changing what you're doing on defense just to better combat the fact that you're without so many bodies. But, when we talk about needing more time, it's so deep into the season, obviously. There's it's starting to dwindle. There's not a lot of time left. So I guess let's just start with Dan Quinn. If you're calling plays defensively, would you dial anything up or down? Like before we get into the fact that it may not make much of a difference, or based on you were with him in Atlanta. He was a head coach, not a play caller, but the guy really well. Yeah. What do you think he's going to do in terms of being a play caller that might be different?
Well, I think what Dan does at a really high level, and what I thought Joe Wood Jr. did before kind of this thing all went to hell in a handbasket, is they knew what their guys did well. And, I was talking to Fletch, I was talking to Smoot, I was watching film, and I'm like, if you had to pick, and I think we were talking too the other day, like if you had to pick one thing that they were excellent at right now, what would it be? And I can't tell you what it is at the moment, right? It's just everything seems to be a struggle. When we bring pressure on first down, we're a little bit loose with our run fits. The lanes get a little bit wide, right? Okay, we're going to play coverage on first down. Our 4 down front, the linebackers are misfitting runs at the second level, or the nickel's not in the right position, or it's a play pass and the nickel's getting fit in the I couldn't tell you. And I think that's the thing that feels so overwhelming, quite honestly, about the defense is like I'm a solution-based guy. I'm generally very optimistic, but with this defense, I'm kind of like, I don't even know where you start, quite honestly, because it's everybody's kind of taking their turn, making a mistake. And it just is one of those things where I don't know how to fix it necessarily. So when you ask me, Grant, like, what are we going to do? What's Dan going to do? It's like, I don't have a great answer for you. Cause I don't see, it's like, for example, with the offense, you're like, okay, the 13 personnel thing worked really well. The condensed formations worked really well. Marcus Mariota sees this type of throw well. Let's lean into that stuff more, right? That's obvious. Let's do that stuff more. With the defense, it's like in the last 2 games, really the last 3 games, outside of that 1 quarter first half of Kansas City, I haven't seen a lot to hang your hat on, right? And so I don't have a good answer. And hopefully Dan figures something out. Again, I think you probably want to play a little bit, be aggressive, bring a little bit more pressure on first down, play a little bit more man. But when they've done that outside of the LA Chargers game, it hasn't really worked for them super well. So I just think it's going to take some time for them to find their legs, find what they do well, and let Dan kind of make those decisions. And again, that's probably not what fans want to hear. But again, I watch a ton of football, and I'm not sure there's a definitive answer to what is going to change this thing.
I also think that's part of why it took so long to make the change, if I'm being honest, because, when you say you don't know how much of a difference a different play caller is going to make, I think Dan's probably seeing the same thing if we're seeing it, and he's going, okay, well, I'm not going to take this from Joe, the last couple of weeks, but then you get to a point where over a 4-game stretch, you've allowed 1,805 yards and 154 points, and it's like pulling the goalie, whether the goalie's the one giving up the goals or not. Right. And just trying something different. And also to some extent in the building, you'd have to tell me what a player perspective is like. I'm sure the defensive guys, Von Miller's been very public about this, Bobby Wagner, they didn't want this change. They don't think it's on the coach. But I do think there's got to be, maybe it's just a message sending thing to the outside, but like the status quo is unacceptable in terms of the result. So I'm not even saying from a football perspective, but from any job, like you've just got to try something different. To keep showing up at work and just ramming your head against the wall gets really tough. And that's why they've made the change that they've made. The one thing I would say in the past I've seen when defenses are going through ruts is you playmaker your way out of it. Like you get a guy like Marshawn Lattimore against the Chiefs, makes a great interception on the sideline, and you're like, whoa, they got to stop. Like they did it. Now Kelsey gives him the assist on a ball he should have caught. But like later in that first half, Bobby Wagner makes a play, comes down with an interception, right spot, right time. And all of a sudden you get to the end of that half and you've allowed, I think it was 0 points in the first quarter and 7 in the first half. Things look a lot better. It's not like they were getting stops and forcing a bunch of punts, but they got 2 takeaways. So that would be my prescription. It's easier said than done, but you need someone to make a play. Maybe Jacob Martin gets a sack fumble. Maybe Bobby Wagner, arm punch, peanut punches a ball out. Maybe Quan Martin, who had a pick 6 in the playoffs against the Lions last year, makes a pick or bats a ball that gets intercepted by Jonathan Jones or something. You have to playmaker your way out of it a little bit, I think.
I think that's a great point. And I think the thing is also is like a lot of your playmakers are banged up. So who's going to kind of step into that role? Who's going to grow as a player and make that opportunity happen? And I think that's something, if you wanted to do that, Grant, like if you wanted to invite that level of variance, being more aggressive is maybe the way to do it. Being like, hey, we're going to bring a lot of pressure. We're going to play man coverage and we might get beat, but we're going to get ours too. Right. And so you're kind of relying on being this high variance group. And you see teams like, I think a really good example of this actually is the Buffalo Bills. Like they're a relatively high variance group. They're like a bend but don't break. They bring a fair amount of pressure, and they rely on turnovers to kind of keep them in games defensively. The problem is like when you don't get those turnovers, you're in trouble. However, they've been very successful for a long time in terms of creating turnovers when they need them. So maybe that's what you lean into and say, hey man, we're just going to try. I'm going to try and put these guys in the best position to bring variance, positive and negative, to this game, and hopefully the variance swings in our favor. And statistically, we're just able to kind of swing it, or from a probability standpoint, we're able to kind of swing this and make it happen for us.
Let's look at the offense and take a look back on the film study Logan did of how Washington's which found some things down the field finally, performed against the Detroit Lions. We'll do that next on Take Command. Welcome back to Take Command. Logan Paulsen, Grant Paulsen, looking back at the Commanders from a 44-22 loss to the Detroit Lions. All right, offensively, it sounds funny to say after you get beat handily, but there was plenty to like, and they made some real strides. We can get to the run game, which still struggled to find its footing, but the vertical passing game was back, and I liked Marcus Mariota's game fine in real time. When I went back and watched, I actually really liked how he played. I don't know how you feel, but 16 of 22, couple hundred yards, 2 touchdowns. Rating was over 130, didn't turn the ball over. I thought that's a kind of game, if you're playing a lesser team, that gives you a chance to win.
I think so too. And I think, I got kind of roasted in the post-game show that we did with the Commanders for being like too optimistic. But I think there are reasons to be optimistic about the offense specifically, right? Like when you look at Marcus Mariota, like he manages this offense very, very well. And it's not just as a runner. Like I think he just made consistent, good, positive decisions in this game. And I think, Cliff deserves a lot of credit for getting in 12, getting in 13 personnel, getting them to match in zone, getting them out of their man coverage tendencies and letting these guys on the perimeter who are maybe a little bit less skilled find ways to win. And I think Marcus did a decent job of facilitating that, where it's like you get that deep dig to Traylon Burks. Like I haven't seen a throw like that in a couple of weeks. You know what I mean? Where we've got it's a contested catch, tight window. There's my guy. Let me throw it to you, right? There's the go down the sideline where you get a guy who can actually win versus man-to-man coverage. And unfortunately, Traylon Burks isn't playing this week because of the finger injury, which is a real bummer. But I do think you saw signs of life. I mean, even seeing Jalen Lane down the field in a contested catch situation, like that's a nice explosive element to this offense that we haven't seen. And so I do think that Marcus did a lot of good things in this game, very positive things. And I think, like you said, versus maybe a lesser team or a lesser offense, you're in a better situation. The one thing that keeps popping up with this group is their inefficiency on third down. And when you've got a defense like the one the Commanders currently have, you have to possess the football more. And we've talked about, running the football, explosive shots. I also think we have to get back to some of the stuff we were doing in terms of being really good on third down like we were last year, just being a touch more aggressive on fourth down. I think that's something that we have to think about too. Because again, when your defense can't stop them, the field position thing to me doesn't really matter. It's like we just got to score points. And so those are again, I think Marcus did a lot of really good things. I think the offensive line played relatively well. There's some things obviously they can clean up, but for the most part played well. And so I think if you can get your O-line playing well and the quarterback playing well, you definitely got a shot each and every week you play football. It's just now, can we become a touch more efficient in these critical situations? Because if we can, we got a shot.
2 for 10 on third down in this game was disastrous, but they ranked 19th, which is kind of middling, not awful, but as you said, about 37% conversion rate. A lot of that's going to come back to what you're down in distance. Generally, what coaches do is they'll break it down. 3rd and 1 to 3rd and 3 or so, the rate of success in the league is pretty significantly better than 3rd and medium, which is still right around 50 or a little better than that. And then you go 3rd and 7 or longer, you're just asking to punt. I mean, that's how it's going to work. And they've been in some of those longer down and distances because they haven't run the ball quite as well, which why don't we go there now? I think naturally that's the transition. So Bill averages 2.7 a pop. Rodriguez averaged 2.7 a pop before he got hurt. Those guys combined for 16 for 46, I guess it was in this game. And then Jeremy McNichols did have a 9-yard run. You take that away, it was like 4 for 16 for him. He was their most effective guy as their third used running back as like a change of pace. But the streak continues here of 4+ weeks without really being able to run it effectively. I thought they did some cool things, especially in the passing game out of the 13 personnel and using extra tight ends, and I want to see more of that. But they still couldn't get the run game going. What'd you see?
Yeah, and again, I go back to this. Everyone says, "Oh, we gotta, just find a way to be more efficient running the football." That is a fake statistic, in my opinion. It's something that I'm glad you brought up because 2.7 it tells a story of the game, right? But what you need to do is you need to convert on third down so you can just give the backs more attempts. Like that's really what it comes down to, right? We just need to possess the ball more effectively, right? And so I think that's where I'd say, like, to me, it's a little bit of a canary in the coal mine. It is a significant thing to look at, but it's significant for a different reason than what most people would look to, right? The run game is inefficient because we're not getting the back enough touches. And people say, well, give the back more touches. That's logically that makes sense. But when you look at football, it doesn't make sense because you need to make sure that you're possessing the football. And so, again, that's where I'd say like the third down thing to me trickles down to this metric too, because there's going to be a time where Chris Rodriguez is going to break off a 15-yard run, a 16-yard run, and all of a sudden that average looks way, way better, right? Way more significant, way improved. And so to me, the run game, I think they did some good things. When you pack bodies in, man, you better be ready to kind of, have a slobber knocker of a fight. You're not going to have clean runs. You're kind of waiting for that one that squirts and pops out. But to me, it's indicative of something completely different than what I think a lot of people would take from that data at face value.
So I want to go chicken or the egg with you, like counter that just a bit, which is to say, if you're averaging 2.7, aren't you often in longer third downs? And it's part of the reason why you're not converting on third down. Like, in other words, there's 1st and 10 runs where you're setting up 2nd and 9, 2nd and 8 when you're not running well. And now an incompletion and it's 3rd and punt. Whereas if you're averaging 4, 4.5, whatever, you're more often in 2nd and 6, and then maybe in 3rd and 2, and your conversion rate goes up. So is there a little chicken or the egg there?
I think they are correlated for sure. That's why I'm saying it's not an insignificant statistic, right? Because it's an offensive football play. They're all related. You know what I mean? But I do think like it comes down to frequency when you're running the football, right? You're going to get a misfit. Like the thing is, when you go 3 and out, you give it back to them, and they're possessing the football for a long period of time. I'm talking about the Detroit Lions, right? Like the offense is out of rhythm, right? There's a pressure, a strain on the offense. Imagine, like, I think about the best moments for this offense where they're able to find an explosive chunk. They're able to get on a little momentum. This offense is so devastating when they have the momentum of a first down behind them and they're just rolling and they just find these easy completions, chunks. The run game seems to come to life. It's awesome to see. Like, I think about, for example, like there was a 3 and out in the third quarter where Cliff Kingsbury chose to go play action pass on first down, which I love, right? But a little bit of pressure, ball's incomplete. It's 2nd and 10. And I was like, man, if you just start that, even with a 2.7-yard rush, and you get to 2nd and 7, like you are still, the playbook is still at your disposal. We can play action, we can RPO, we can do whatever we need to do. And again, so like, while that number is very low, to me, it's just about sequencing plays, putting yourself in a position where, hey, we can go on a 6-play drive as opposed to a 3-play drive. And again, like, that's the thing that it seems to be the biggest bugaboo for the offense. And again, they are related, but I would like to, again, like, if you go on a 6-play drive and you give the back 3 touches, that's great. If it's 3 and out and you give the back 1 touch, like, you never give them the opportunity to find that explosive opportunity, to find that chunk run that's going to help the average and help the offense look a little bit more efficient. And so that's why I kind of look in that direction a little bit more. But you're right. I mean, it is related for sure.
Yeah. So I'm never going to be a run the dang ball guy. It's just not how I see the game. But I understand the value of it. And as someone who played in the league in your role, like, you know this better than I do, or anybody listening. Like, there is, even if you're not running it effectively in terms of yards per attempt, there are wins with quantity over quality. And to this point, what you're talking about, which is like, the efficiency maybe helping you stay on the field or whatever. Like, the San Francisco 49ers right now are dead last in yards per attempt.
And I think Seattle's not doing great either. I think they're pretty low also.
They're 29th in the NFL out of 32 teams, which is crazy to me. Now, Seattle gets some explosives and they pop some big ones like San Francisco does. But, those are really effective offenses with top 10 passing games, and they still have play action. And so you'd like to see more things built off of that. But I'll be curious to see as they kind of go further here with leaning more into the tight ends being on the field, 12 and 13 personnel, if that's what they're going to do, which is what I've wanted to see more of in the passing game anyway. I think that's where play action and some explosives come from anymore in this sport. Like, how does that work in the run game? Because you are bringing more bodies in, and it kind of muddies some things up. Could this also mean, if they're going to go heavier with personnel, good things for Ben Sinnott? We saw him catch a touchdown. I know people have been calling for him. It's not an unreasonable ask for a second-round pick to be targeted more than once a month or so. Like, could we start to see him get more involvement in the passing game, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's one of the things I'm excited about with the 12 and 13 personnel is, like, I think that's where he is most effective, is off of the play action shot. I think we saw a little bit of that on his touchdown where he's running to the flat, get him the football kind of at or near the line of scrimmage and let him work from a yards after catch standpoint, or let him work something vertical where the action of the run, the action of the play action is setting you up to create space, as opposed to you having to generate and create space on your own, the way like Zach Ertz would, for example. So I think that's a huge benefit of the 13 and 12 personnel, is that maybe you'll see a little bit more Ben Sinnott. But yeah, and again, just to go back to the run game thing, like, because I think it's a really interesting conversation. When you look at Seattle, the thing that jumps out, when you look at San Francisco, the thing that jumps out is that they continually run the football and they'll kind of bang their head against the wall. Right. But they're able to do that because they're getting first downs. You know what I mean? It's just, it's this weird.
Look at the plays they run per game.
Yeah.
For people at home, like, if one succinct way to put this is, like, if you're running 53 snaps in a game, you're probably not getting enough targets for your number one receiver, and you're mad about that. You're probably not getting enough carries for your running back, and you want more. Well, there's teams that are running 79 snaps in a game. Guess what? Right. All of a sudden, somebody gets 12 targets. The running back gets 19 carries. It's a volume issue when you're not staying on the field, is your point, which is they're just intuitive. I mean, that makes sense.
And so again, to me, like, one of the things when you watch San Francisco, they're great on third down. They have a great third down package for Christian McCaffrey specifically. When you look at Seattle, like the Jackson Smith and Jigba element of that offense, and the pin and the pull routes, the deep digs, and his relationship with Sam Darnold, it keeps him on the field and it lets guys get touches. And eventually, you'll see Zach Charbonnet or what's the other running back's name from Michigan State?
Kenneth Walker.
Kenneth Walker. Like, they'll pop one, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's a pretty good day at the office. And I go back to even Detroit when I was prepping for them, while watching them versus the Tampa Bay game. Tampa Bay did a good job stopping the run, but Detroit got first downs. They stuck with it, and Jahmyr Gibbs rips off a 75-yard touchdown run. So you're like, oh, that average all of a sudden looks amazing, and that's one of the reasons why. So again, like, you bring up a great point in terms of offensive efficiency, but I look at last year, like, they weren't like the most efficient team running the football on early downs. Jaden did a great job of extending drives with scrambles. Quick game was a huge element, getting them to third and manageable, and then converting, like you were just talking about. So I think, to me, like, that's the thing I'd want to see moving forward with the offense is, yes, you've designed an offense well, but now can we make sure that we're efficient and possessing the football?
Daniels had an all-time third down season statistically in terms of EPA, and frankly, unsustainably so. And so that was part of it last year. By the way, this goes against my theory because the Niners are third in the NFL on third downs, despite being dead last in yards per attempt. Meaning, I was saying, doesn't that mean you're behind the chains and less likely to convert? Seahawks, for what it's worth, 16th on third down. But to your point, both of those teams staying on the field, converting more, getting those touches. I wanted to talk really quickly about Treylon Burks because this is the story of this season, as far as I'm concerned. Like, it can end whenever it wants to. Treylon Burks, I mean, this dude, like, that was exciting to me. I am looking for moments and stories and anecdotes and things like this where I'm like, damn, we might have a little something here. Washington might have found a guy. 3 targets, 3 catches, 58 yards, 37 down the field. He's physical. You mentioned the dig and the conceptually, like, boxing guys out. He's fighting through contact on the outside. He's huge, 6'2", 225. He's a former first-round pick. I'm going, I can't wait to watch him against Miami. Let's see if he can stack pennies here. Let's see if we can put another one on tape. And then we find out he had some mini procedure on his finger, some mini surgery. He's not going to be out for a long time, but at least this week, hopefully he's back after the bye, and he doesn't even make the trip to Madrid. Welcome to 2025 with this team. Like, he was the story coming out of the game in a lot of ways.
I know.
How cool is this? Treylon Burks might be playing well this season. And then he's gone before you can even pat him on the back.
Dude, I was talking to Santana about that, and like we were like, it was post game where like we don't know anything about the hand injury yet, and Tana's like, man, like he's got something. And like you said, when you see a first round guy that's kicked around a little bit because of injury, and all of a sudden they seem to be healthy, you see the movement skills, you see the ball skills, you see the way he snatches the football, you're like, man, like that guy can play some football. And again, like he's a young player. If he continues to develop, shoot, like when Terry comes back, when Noah comes back, now we've got maybe a third guy here that can do some stuff for you in the pass game, and it becomes exciting. And then, like you said, this is the story. Anytime anybody shows any kind of promise,
right? Anytime anything good happens, that guy will be unavailable soon.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, we were talking about Payne, like, and his is a very different thing, like we just talked about, but he was having a great year. And then now he's not available in this game, right? Treylon Burks not available in this game. And it's just, and C-Rod, man, I was so excited to see him get more touches early to kind of open it up and soften it up for Bill Krosky-Merritt. And he's got a shoulder. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, like anything positive that seems to get you juiced about the game. It's not like even the Marcus Mariota thing loses some of its shine because the guy that he was going to be throwing to is not going to play in this game. So I don't know, man. This is something that I've talked to you about a little bit off air. This is a very tough year to talk about this team because I love the Commanders. I love football. I love talking ball. I love talking about good football. And every time anything seems to blossom in front of us, it's like this big old hand comes down and just squishes it down. You're like, okay, well, I guess I'll look for another little flower here somewhere in this mud, So,
Papa, is anything worth talking about, Papa? Will there ever be hope?
You're the little British boy. Just getting swatted away. You're like,
maybe it's true. Maybe we'll get some bread from the bread line today.
I don't know why.
Tim, man. Yeah, it was good. I like it.
I don't know why there's a bread line. But yeah, man, it's just like, you got to be kidding me. And look, I am a guy who believes in, like, everyone does this next man up tough guy bit. This is not a this year thing. This is just my philosophy. Go back and listen to me on the radio for 15 years. I don't really play that game because the next man up normally isn't as good, but you can miss a few guys here or there, right? Next men up doesn't work for me. Having said that, even as I think like fair to injuries and to teams as I am, and I'm just speaking for myself, the expectation cannot be that you just get your teeth kicked in by 20 every week. And there's this middle ground here that they've got to find, right? Which is to say, I get it. You're not going to be a top 5 defense. You're not going to beat Kansas City or Detroit or Seattle, who I think right now might be the most complete team in the league. But you can't lose 4 straight games by 20+ when no one's done it in 23 years. And like that's where they've got to find a way. You can't just – this is not some directional Florida taking on SEC teams. Like you got to be better than they have. And I think if they can be competitive and they can put some good things on film defensively, we're saying it's really hard to find them right now. And there's some things that you can look at. then people might feel a little bit differently about this, the operation, the trend, the way things head into next year. But I think even reasonable people can sit here and go, yes, the injuries are terrible. They're getting decimated. The Lions had 3 linemen out and just kept on marching toward the goal line. Like sometimes you can just make a play. Sometimes other guys can step up, and they definitely need more of that.
I think the thing you said there is like you just want them to be competitive, right? And I think that's what Dan and his staff wants. Like every time he comes to the presser, he's like, I just want us to be, what does he say? I want us to be competitive and tough, right? And right now, for whatever reason, that's not going down the way he wants it to go down. That's why some of the changes have been made. But I think that the staff and the team, they want what we want. And I think it's a reasonable expectation. And it's speaking to the next man up thing. Yeah, like you're not going to be as good as the guy that's starting, but can you at least be competitive? And I think that's what we're getting at here. And I think it's a great point.
They just, and this might be a week to do it, honestly. They're leveling down. They had their toughest stretch. I called it the gauntlet against 3 elite teams in a row while they were their most hurt. Now this is more of a pick-em type game against the Miami Dolphins. And this is a game, frankly, that you should absolutely be able to win. So let's see what this looks like on Sunday. I think this would be more revealing than the ones before it if it were to go really badly. And then we got to have some tough conversations next week. But we're allowed to talk about wins too. And ideally, we get to do that at some point again on Take Command. All right, we'll put a bow on the show next. Take Command after a Commanders loss to the Detroit Lions. You can watch us 106.7 The Fan, Team 980. You can subscribe, rate, review to this pod wherever you get your audio. Logan Paulsen and Grant Paulsen. Just as an aside, who was the best of the 3 teams, do you think, in that gauntlet? Like, who impressed you the most when you watched the tape?
Seattle, for sure.
I think so, too. I think they're the best team in football right now. They were up 35-0 a week after being up 28-0. Like, what they're doing and adding Rashid Shaheed as well, I think Seattle's going to be a pain in the ass to deal with, man.
Dude, their offense is good. Like I want to say it's a fine offense. There's some exciting elements to it, no doubt. But the thing that is just so impressive is I don't see anybody playing defense the way they're playing it right now. I know defense is a little bit up and down statistically, but golly, man, the way that front gets after the run and the pass, the way they can kind of match zones, the way they can play man coverage, the pressures they bring. It to me is cutting edge football at the moment. It's exactly what that Baltimore defense was supposed to be a couple years ago when he was there. So, yeah, man, it's they're going to be tough to deal with. Just I know people say like kind of facetiously now defense wins championships, but I think that defense is that good, and that offense it supports that offense well enough, man. Yeah, they were just incredibly impressive.
Miami Dolphins up next. We're going to do a preview pod coming up in a couple days. Logan's going to crunch all of the tape and the film. I'm going to dive into some numbers. We're going to get you some analysis on the Washington's game with Miami. No Daron Payne, as we talked about. And then a handful of guys did not make the trip. Of course, Jaden Daniels, Traylon Burks we've talked about. Terry McLaurin also going to miss a 7th game in his last 8. Fingers crossed for Terry that out of the bye, with an extra couple of weeks to rest up here, he can come back and kind of salvage a quarter or so of this season. I mean, this has been a lost year via injury for him. It's just been a nightmare of a season.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that's so difficult, like a guy is doing what he thinks is best for him and his financial future and kind of pulling all the strings necessary to get that done, and has an injury, has a season that we haven't seen him have before where he's kind of not available. And so, yeah, I hope he gets right because, again, just like I like watching Terry play. I like watching Jaden Daniels play. I like watching Noah Brown play, and to have them not play, I like watching Traylon Burks play. Like, I'm excited about that. So not having them available at all for the next couple of weeks is tough. And so hopefully coming out of the bye, get a little healthier, get those guys out on the field, and let Cliff cook the way he was able to cook last year.
This is a bigger topic for another day, but because you just brought him up, I am just curious to get your initial thought. Dan Quinn has not said yet whether or not for sure Jaden would come back. I mean, if he's healthy, I have been making the case that he should absolutely play. Like if there's a month left in the season and they think he can go, there are plenty of fans that are saying shut him down, kind of redshirt him the next year, keep him off the field. I think that's one of the craziest things I've ever heard. I don't understand that logic at all. I'm just curious what you think. Am I the one taking crazy pills? Like a healthy quarterback who could be on the field developing for a month, who's a second-year player who needs time on the grass. Cliff keeps saying time on task, not enough practices, not enough games. We're just going to have him healthy and not playing for 4 games? Like, that seems crazy to me.
I think I align with you, and I understand where people are coming from to a certain extent. Like, I think there's a lot of trauma associated with, like Robert's injury, for example. But to me, like, the worst thing about these injuries, obviously, besides the personal discomfort and disruption to Jaden Daniels specifically, is the fact that he's not getting the reps. He's not seeing defenses. So even, when he gets hurt against Seattle, I was like, I like that he's in, because hopefully this offense gets in a rhythm. We get to make some plays. We get to do some things. And so if he's healthy, I think you want him to, if you're a fan of this team, you want the best version of Jaden for 2026. And if he sits out the rest of this year, it's not going to go great. You know what I'm saying? He needs time on task. He needs to see NFL defenses. He needs to get used to making tight window throws and getting comfortable with what they're presenting to him. Because, again, like, I look at guys that have missed a year of football at the quarterback position because of injury, and the track record is not great in terms of when they come back. So I think get him out there, get him some reps, help him learn what he can and can't get away with. Like, even if it's like, hey, Jaden, these are 4 preseason games. Just go do your thing. And this is purely learning. Like, there is so much value in that for him. And so to me, like, yeah, if you're healthy and you're good, let's play ball.
Logan Paulsen takes on Madrid. If you see anybody eating rotisserie chicken on a curb somewhere in Spain, it's our guy getting those peas. Logan, enjoy yourself. I'm a little jealous. It's going to be a fun trip. I know you got a lot of work to do, but try to experience some culture as well, man. Should be a good time.
Yeah, man, I'm really looking forward to it. Get out and seeing some sights.
It's going to be good. Hopefully the Commanders can put the exclamation point on it with a win. Next pod we do, deep dive into the Miami Dolphins. For Logan, I'm Grant saying thanks for listening. For our producer, Evan, we are back at it in just a couple of days with a preview pod. We give you 3 a week. It's Take Command.